So you might have heard about a slightly surprising plan from Johnson. For a while now, there's been talk of building a bridge linking Great Britain to Northern Ireland. This rather outlandish plan might make more sense alongside some of Johnson's other out-there infrastructure projects, including the now infamous Garden Bridge or the cable cars crossing the Thames. So in this video, we're going to explain the much discussed bridge, tell you why Johnson wants it to become a reality, and discuss if it will ever happen. As you might have noticed, we've been pushing Patreon in February, and that's because we're about to expand the TLDR team from 1 full-time employee to 2 and then 3. If you want to support our expansion, help us create more content and get a bunch of bonus perks, we'd love your backing on Patreon. As a special incentive, all patrons who donate at least $10 will get a free golden UK pin badge, which will never be available for general sale. There's a link to the Patreon down below.
And build the Boris Bridge, not just the Boris Bus.
As for his desire for a bridge to connect the two biggest isles in the British Isles, all I can say it is a very interesting idea. I advise him to watch this space and indeed watch that space between those islands, because what he has said has not fallen on deaf ears.
So, the basics. Johnson is proposing that the UK builds a road bridge to connect Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The bridge would likely be 30 miles long and link Portpatrick in Scotland with Larne in Northern Ireland. There is an alternative route which would require a slightly more manageable distance, being 12 miles shorter than its southern counterpart. But this route between the Mull of Kintyre and the Antrim coast has far worse transport links, making it much less feasible in reality. So for this video, we're going to be discussing the Portpatrick and Larne proposal. A 30-mile bridge might sound difficult, but actually it would be far from the longest road bridge in the world if it were to be built. The longest bridge in the world, the Danyang Kusang Grand Bridge, comes in at 120 miles in China. While far longer than the proposed bridge, it doesn't actually cross anywhere near as much water, tending to cover a lot more ground instead. So maybe a more comparable bridge would be something like the nearly 24-mile-long Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, built in the US and opened in 1956. China has another incredibly long bridge, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Link, which is actually the longest sea bridge in the world. The 34-mile bridge includes 2 road links, a main bridge and a subsea tunnel, meaning that while it's the longest, it's not a continuous bridge in the same way that the proposed UK Northern Ireland Bridge would be. So a bridge like this isn't inconceivable, and other countries might have been able to build longer bridges, but it's worth considering the geography of this specific route. The 24-mile causeway we mentioned a moment ago is not only shorter, but crosses a lake rather than open sea, and the Chinese bridge only has to handle depths up to 120 metres. Johnson's proposed 30-mile bridge would span Beaufort's Dyke, a 300-metre deep submarine trench. A trench almost the same depth as the Shard. And if a trench the depth of the Eiffel Tower sounds too easy to you, then don't worry, there's another level of difficulty to account for. The trench was used by the Ministry of Defence after the Second World War, and the ministry dropped an estimated 1 million tonnes of munitions into the seabed, along with several tonnes of nuclear waste. This makes it the biggest British military dump in the world, or at least the biggest one we know about. One engineer commissioned to do a feasibility report on the project said that his plan would avoid the trench, but even this alternative route would experience depths up to 160 metres, making securing the bridge to the seabed very challenging. Not only that, but the sea that the bridge would run through isn't exactly the smoothest route. The Guardian spoke to a lifeboat coxswain who's worked in Portpatrick for 3 decades. He described the waters as a busy sea lane, deep water, heavy sea, and then there's the wind factor, going on to say that over the past few nights, any bridge would have had to be closed. I can imagine a bridge being closed a lot, especially in wintertime. Some engineers do say that the project will be possible though, with Ian Firth, a fellow at the Institution of Civil Engineers, saying that while there are a huge number of technical challenges, anything is possible if you throw enough money at it, as well as saying that the structure could be built within 15 years. Firth did go on to say that the project will be right up there with one of the toughest bridges in the world, and that the plan would be eye-wateringly expensive. And it certainly is looking like it will be an expensive project, with estimates ranging between 15 and 20 billion pounds, although some engineers have been keen to insist that it will cost more than that, describing the 20 billion pound figure as a conservative estimate. Supporters say that some of this money will be recouped in the form of tolls charged to the bridge's users. And to be fair, charging a toll does make sense. Not only do similar bridges charge tolls, like the causeway in the US we mentioned before, but many of the businesses and individuals using the crossing would be saving a lot of money. Getting goods and people between Great Britain and Northern Ireland isn't cheap at the moment, so it's reasonable to assume that people will be willing to fork out and pay to cross the bridge instead. Because of this, some people say that the cost of the bridge could be offset by toll revenue over time. Not only is the route tricky, but if the bridge were built today, the roads on either side would be woefully unprepared. That's because there's currently no major road linking the bridge to major cities and the UK's motorway network. In fact, there's not even a dual carriageway that runs to Port Patrick. And this has been a major point of dispute for a while now, with many in southwest Scotland complaining about the area's poor road and rail links. That might explain why the local member of the Scottish Parliament, Joan McAlpine, said that she needed to see evidence of the economic benefit the bridge would provide to the area, and why Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon called the bridge a diversionary tactic. So the bridge is set to be built across rough, deep sea, between two places with poor transport connections, and the local people aren't convinced. Why would Johnson possibly support such a difficult project? Well, as much as infrastructure projects like this bridge are about the benefits they provide and the functions they serve, they're often also used as a signal for how a country sees themselves. Think of Trump's wall or the world's tallest building in Dubai. These might serve a functional purpose, but they're also there to tell the rest of the world and the citizens of the country what they stand for. In Trump's case, it's protectionism and security, and in the UAE's, it's wealth and engineering. If you think of the bridge in the same manner, you can see why Johnson might be keen on the project. In the light of Brexit and the checks that are set to take place between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, it's a signal that the Union will remain united, and that Northern Ireland will continue to have great importance in the UK. Therefore, connecting the two is a sign of unity and ongoing trade. It's likely because of this that Johnson and the Unionist DUP have been discussing the idea for a while now. In fact, Johnson's government confirmed earlier this week that ministers were actively looking into the project. A spokesman said that there's a proper piece of work being carried out into the idea. It's reporting into Number 10, but obviously will take advice from wherever it is needed. So the government is certainly taking this seriously, even if engineers have been very sceptical about the project thus far. But as we said at the start, many have grown to expect this kind of thing from Johnson. A man who's famous for his ambitious infrastructure projects, like the regularly discussed Garden Bridge in London, which cost £50 million despite the fact it was never built. Or perhaps it reminds you of the cable cars running across the Thames between Greenwich Peninsula and the Royal Docks. This £60 million project is surely popular with some, but its symbolism goes far further than its tangible value, with a recent report finding that only 4 people regularly rely on the line, making it more of a novelty project than a genuine transport necessity. Johnson seems to really like these symbolic infrastructure projects, even if it often looks like the practical benefits don't justify the costs. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you agree that the symbolism is worth the extra expenditure. What do you think about this proposed bridge between Scotland and Northern Ireland? Do you think that it will provide benefits to the area, or at least be a positive symbol for the Union? Or do you think that it will take much more than an expensive road bridge to quell nationalist sentiment in Scotland and Northern Ireland? Be sure to let us know in the comments down below. You can also get involved in the conversation over on Discord. There's a link to the server down below, and by joining you can take part in discussions about all kinds of topics, from European politics and Brexit to gaming and philosophy. There's over 1,000 people on the server at the moment discussing a variety of topics from all kinds of different perspectives. So if you want to get involved in the conversation and discuss our videos, then that's the place to do it. Also, we've got a special channel on there exclusively for Patreon backers. So if you happen to be one of our backers on Patreon, you can get exclusive access to this special channel, where you can talk directly to Team TLDR and other Patreon backers. Join the over 1,000 people on the server and join the conversation today. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want further updates on the EU. Be sure to hit the bell icon if you want to be notified every time we release a video. Also, if you want more from us across all social networks, then just search for TLDR News.